Fall is upon us, a welcome season when every year, in a reliable pace with the clockwork of the planet, the harvest is gathered in until storehouses are full with ample food for our families and our community for the next year. Fall is also the time at which, reliably, the once green fields that have been nurtured and cared for all year turn brown. The weather turns cold, with colder weather ahead, and if you haven't collected a year's worth of food by then, you're not going to. All that's left is time to stay inside and think and reflect on life. At this time of year, I like to search some of the corners of life I haven't looked into yet. And until now, I'd missed a major event that here in 21st century North America is overshadowed by the bland and really meaningless holiday we call Halloween. Modern culture has reduced Halloween to a silly, pretend-scary annual costume party for which men buy cheap but fancy costumes to dress up as pirates, and women? Well, women can choose a variety of costumes. Sexy pirate, sexy nurse, sexy French maid, sexy vampire. The list goes on and on. Every year, your doorbell is rung by one Disney princess after another, sometimes several at once. Every year, parents are terrified that there are needles or razor blades in their children's candy, even though nothing like that has ever actually happened. Every year, incredibly ignorant people rail against Halloween as Satan worship, even though it's an official Catholic period of remembrance. In the process, how much has been left behind? How much that started and took form way back in prehistory because people needed it? The season is marked in many cultures all over the world and has been pretty much always. Its currently familiar shape comes from the traditional Catholic season called All-Hallowtide, All Hallows' Eve on October 31st, All Saints' Day on November 1st, and All Souls' Day on November 2nd. These are not days devoted to the worship of the devil. They're days devoted to a deeply felt human practice, remembering and honoring those upon whose shoulders we, the living, have stood, and all those whose lives we've been fortunate to share for a while. If you have to call it anything, call it ancestor worship, or at least reverence. Something I had not previously fully understood is that most cultures and religions around the world, ancient and modern, Christian and otherwise, each in their own way, see an active spiritual bond between the living and the souls or spirits of those who are no longer with us. I've always been stubborn and rejected traditions as something others are trying to impose on me, whether I like it or not. And I guess there's a downside to that. It doesn't really leave me much room to learn. But I've lost a number of family and friends in recent years, and at age 66, I'm at an age where if people were to hear that I'd died, they'd no longer say, "How sad he was so young." This year, I'm going to see what happens when I try a very old form of this tradition, originating in Mexico, taking a special time to reflect on the thin boundary between life and death, how precious life is, and how fortunate I've been to share moments or years of it with special people. I've learned a bit about Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, and it seems fresh and clean to me, a chance to grow. Some people may say that joining in is an insensitive example of cultural appropriation. I think of it as good old American melting pot cultural exchange. Whenever I've spoken to those who celebrate it as part of their own culture, it's been described as a big party that anyone can join and shape to their own taste. Anyone is welcome to take what means something to them and leave the rest, and you can even make up parts that are special to you. So, I'm coming to the party I've been invited to. Dia de los Muertos is a happy and colorful celebration where death looks you in the eye and shows a skeletal but friendly smile. And in response, you say back to death, because you really have no choice, it's your party. Come anytime, welcome friend. After all, death is only the end if you assume the story is only about you. Dia de los Muertos is a 3-day celebration combining traditions from Mexico's Catholic heritage and far, far older traditions from Mexico's pre-Columbian Indian cultures. The festival is an invitation calling the spirits of your loved ones to visit from wherever they've gone, and also calling the living to meet them in the middle along that path. It's not a time for sorrow because that would be discourteous to those who are visiting. It's a time for parades, fireworks, costumes, and favorite characters like Katrina, the skeleton of a rich woman with a huge floppy hat. The details vary from village to village, but generally the celebration begins on All Hallows Eve, October 31st, Halloween. Families have been preparing for days, cleaning the house, setting up special altars in the family room with pictures of their loved ones and memorabilia from each of them. All thoughts turn to the temporary nature of our own stay in this life. At a time that varies from town to town, the church bell starts to ring quietly. It will continue to ring for hours. Although the spirits can't be seen, everyone says they can feel their presence. This first evening is for the dead children, the angelitos, the little angels. And if your family has not lost any children, then you give the same caring welcome to the spirits of children who have no one left to remember them. On the second day, it's time to visit with the others we've longed to see, to celebrate the lives of those we miss and remember fondly, and even the ones we don't miss much or at all, because for good or ill, all of them shaped what we are today. On the third day, families go to the cemetery, decorating the graves of loved ones, making little altars there with favorite foods and flowers, sometimes even sleeping there to share a last few hours with them. It's almost time. Everything's ready. There are gifts on the altar to welcome our guests, brightly decorated little sugar skulls and chocolate skulls, toys for the children, and for the adults, bottles of their favorite drinks. And for everyone, bright golden marigolds and pan de muerto, a sweetbread baked specially for these days, sometimes decorated with white frosting to look like bones. Candles are burning, giving the room a warm glow, and incense spreads a fragrance and a strange haze in the air. Pillows are set next to the family's chairs so the spirits can rest after their long journey. And then, when the spirits arrive, people do what families always do when treasured guests visit. We'll sit, and those of us who still have voices talk and reminisce and catch up on family life. The bell is ringing in the local church, and will continue to ring until tomorrow. Everything's ready. I'm looking forward to this visit. The spirits will be here soon. Let's just sit for a minute, kick back, remember the guests we've invited, and wait for them to arrive. Outside, a tiny breeze has picked up, blowing some dry leaves around. And inside, near the door, the incense smoke billows just a little, almost as though someone has just come in.